Tonight on LevinTV, the case against Mitch McConnell and the case for America.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, LevinTV.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is LevinTV on CRTV, Conservative Review TV. Today is Mitch McConnell Day on the LevinTV program. Mitch McConnell, this is your life. And quite frankly, much of it is pathetic. Anyway, Donald Trump is in a bit of a war with Mitch McConnell. I want to welcome the president to the realization that Mitch McConnell is destroying the Republican Party, destroying his agenda, and destroying the conservative agenda. Mitch McConnell is for Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell can barely communicate with the American people. He is a terrible face and voice for the Republican Party. He's certainly not a face or voice for the conservative movement. He's now been the Republican leader for many, many years, both in the minority and the majority. It's no thanks to him that the Republicans have the majority in the Senate. It's thanks to you. And I've been saying since I was targeting John Boehner that McConnell has to go. And I supported his opponent in the 2014 Republican primary, whose name, Matt Bevin, became governor of Kentucky. It was very lonely. Didn't have any support from any websites, no support from any radio hosts, no support from anybody. Now people realize, including the President of the United States, what a disaster this man is. And I would say to the President of the United States, literally hours before you realized that Mitch McConnell was not your friend and that he was a disaster for your agenda, you endorsed Mitch McConnell's candidate in the state of Alabama, Luther Strange. Luther is strange. And Luther Strange has been in the United States Senate for about 6.5 months. And he was put there by a governor who was forced to resign. Luther Strange has very serious questions about his ethics. But even more than that, Luther Strange is nothing more than a toady for Mitch McConnell, which is exactly why Mitch McConnell is spending $8 million, he and his allies, in the race in Alabama, which is next Tuesday. As you know, I've endorsed Mo Brooks, who is a wonderful, wonderful man. And they've tried to destroy Mo Brooks. Mo Brooks is the conservative. Mo Brooks was the state chairman in Alabama for Ted Cruz. When Cruz lost, he supported Trump, as I did, as many people did, in the general election against Hillary Clinton. They're attacking Mo Brooks, claiming he's a liberal like Nancy Pelosi. This is the reason why people get so frustrated. These lies that come in with massive amounts of money raised in Washington, D.C., on K Street and L Street and A Street, where all these lobbyists and special interests are, they distort a person's record. So Mo Brooks, who is a conservative in this race, is treated as an anti-Trump liberal. And Luther Strange, who is a nobody, who is there because of Mitch McConnell, but he's a reliable McConnell vote, he all of a sudden is the great Trump supporter and great conservative. So it creates a lot of confusion in Alabama and throughout the country. But let's get started. This is CNN with Jake Tapper yesterday, Donald Trump, McConnell. Here's the story. Go.
Mitch, get to work and let's get it done.
It may be the most important alliance in Washington, and right now the relationship between Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Donald Trump is as rocky as it has ever been. This afternoon at his Bedminster estate, reporters asked the president if it was time for the Majority Leader to resign.
If he doesn't get repeal and replace done, and if he doesn't get taxes done, meaning cuts and reform, and if he doesn't get a very easy one to get done, infrastructure, if he doesn't get them done, then you can ask me that question.
Stop. And what is wrong with that? I'll sound like a lib for a minute. In every other industrialized country in the world, if you have a so-called leader who's leading the parliament or whatever, and they don't get things done, they resign. Mitch McConnell never gets anything done. Well, that's not true. He helped Obama's agenda. He helped eviscerate the United States military with sequestration and so forth. He didn't do a damn thing to secure the border during the time Obama was in office, and didn't do a damn thing to control Obama's out of control domestic spending. He also threw in the towel on the Iran deal. threw in the towel on judges. The man is a disaster. But I've been saying this year after year after year. It's time to step up. And if he doesn't produce, get the hell out of the way. Go.
Breakdown started Monday night when McConnell gave a seemingly innocuous speech to a very small group of Rotary members in northern Kentucky.
Now, our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before, and I think had excessive expectations about how quickly things happen.
Whoa. How quickly things happen? Nothing happens. Now, what they don't tell you here is, in Reagan's first year in office, by this time, literally this time, we had the biggest, most massive across-the-board tax cuts in modern American history. And guess what? We didn't even control the House of Representatives. The Democrats and Tip O'Neill controlled the House of Representatives. So we were able to get the most massive tax cut in modern American history, if not all American history, which created 25 million jobs right up and through the Clinton administration, created an enormous number of enterprises. The economy just was unleashed, and it helped us defeat the Soviet Union. That occurred by August of his first term in the presidency. For the left, they always talk about the first 100 days, the first 3.5 months, all these things that they get done. This guy is stuck in the mud. He's stuck in the mud. And it's not Trump's expectations, it's all of our expectations that when you control the House and the Senate, you'll get things done. But as long as he holds on to the filibuster rule, the way he holds onto the filibuster rule, like a false idol, and as long as Chuck Schumer runs circles around him, we can't get things done. That's why he needs to step aside. And furthermore, I wasn't joking. He is incapable of connecting with the American people. He has no charisma whatsoever. And his voice, what he has to say, it's all inside bureaucratic nonsense. But I want you to look at him carefully, because this is a man who is vicious and ruthless as an inside fighter, as I'm going to explain to you in just a few moments. Go ahead.
In the democratic process.
McConnell's comments were enough to set the president off, and he voiced his displeasure by tweeting about McConnell 3 times, including this afternoon. Quote, Mitch, get back to work and put repeal and replace, tax reform and cuts, and a great infrastructure bill on my desk for signing. You can do it. The tweets came after White House aides.
How offensive was that? Mitch, do something, will you, you moron? Get something done. Go ahead.
Say that Trump and McConnell held an animated phone call, a call McConnell's office will not discuss, but one source tells CNN occurred while the president was golfing at his resort in New Jersey.
Come here, Mitch. Thank you, Mitch. How are you doing, Mitch? Hey, Mitch, we gonna be okay?
The president's digital attacks are a calculated political risk. He is banking that the average American is on his side. New CNN polling shows that 68% of Americans view the Republican Congress a failure.
Whoa. He's not banking on anything. He's telling Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate, get to work and get something done, will you? That's what he's telling him. You claim to be the leader of the Senate. You voted the leader of the Senate. Now do something on our agenda. Go ahead.
And only 24% have a favorable opinion of Republican leadership, which includes McConnell. But an open feud with McConnell could seriously hamper Trump's legislative agenda.
The back and forth between the president and the Senate Majority Leader isn't going to add any additional votes to the Obamacare repeal effort.
Meanwhile, McConnell and his team refuse to engage, hoping this will pass.
Look at this guy. He can barely get up there. He's leaning over. He's kind of shriveled up. We get more amendments done here. I'll tell you what, we're doing a hell of a job. President just doesn't understand how this stuff works. Go ahead.
Before Congress returns in September with an enormous list of tasks to complete.
Yeah, okay. In any other business, in any other walk of life, you know, you're graded. You're a student, you're a teacher, you're a plumber, you're an electrician, you're a cop, you're a firefighter. You know, you got to do something. You got to produce. You got to show your work, your job. Not here. Now, let's go through some of this. So the president has given him a list of things to do, as you just saw there. Now, I want to tell you about Mitch McConnell in the shadows. Here's a piece from the Washington Post. Spending deal would allow wealthy donors to dramatically increase giving to national parties. This is September 9, 2014, but I want to get to the nub of this. Listen to this. The end-of-year spending bill deal crafted by congressional leaders Tuesday, remember this 3 years ago, would dramatically expand the amount of money that wealthy political donors could inject into the national parties, drastically undercutting the 2002 landmark McCain-Feingold campaign finance overhaul. All right, fine. Let's continue. The language inserted on page 1,599 of the 1,603-page bill. In other words, McConnell slipped it in under cover of dark so you wouldn't know. Would allow individuals to give 3 times the annual cap on national party donations to 3 additional party committees, not to candidates. In other words, it's not a market thing, it's not a free speech thing, not to candidates, but to 3 additional party committees set up for the purposes of the presidential conventions, building expenses, and election recounts. That means that a donor who gave the maximum $32,400 this year to the Democrat National Committee or the Republican National Committee will be able to donate another $291,000 on top of that to the party's additional arms, a total of $324,000, 10 times the current limit. In a 2-year election cycle, a couple could give $1,296,000 to a party's various accounts. This is how Mitch McConnell and his surrogates are able to pour $8 million into Alabama. He did that so money would be freed up, so he could defeat and eviscerate any conservative challenges to Republican incumbents or Republican rhinos who disagree with Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell's now using this money in Alabama to get reelected a man who is an absolute nobody, but to smear conservatives like Mo Brooks and Roy Moore, to overwhelm them with money, to overwhelm. Mitch McConnell slipped this into this bill. You heard it, 1,600-page spending bill, under cover of dark, late at night, at the very end of the bill, and you knew nothing about it. And you know what else? Virtually nobody else knew about it either. And this is where this money's coming from. Mitch McConnell runs the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Sounds easy enough. National Republican Senatorial Committee. He's hired some of the most poisonous, vile human beings crawling on the face of the earth to run it. And they also fund and get support from third-party organizations. In Alabama right now, you have Mitch McConnell and his group. You have Karl Rove and his group, another snake. You have Jeff Rowe, who was Ted Cruz's campaign manager for president, but has spent time since then attacking and defeating conservatives. He is in Alabama supporting Luther Strange. McConnell, Rove, Rowe, and of course now Trump. Meanwhile, Moore and Brooks are raising money mostly from Tea Party advocates, individuals across the country, individuals in Alabama. They are hugely outgunned when it comes to money. And this is the disconnect. You say, my God, we keep voting these people in and they keep going to Washington. They don't do what we want them to do. This primary is a perfect example of how that happens. They're fixed. They're fixed. They go in there and they lie about their candidate. They pretend that they're one of us. They trash one of us, conservative candidates. So a lot of people who don't follow this every day go, well, look, Luther Strange supports Trump and he's a conservative. Why not vote for him? Because he's none of those things. Meanwhile, oh, Mo Brooks is like Pelosi? I'm not voting for a Pelosi Republican. So people who aren't really engaged, this is what they get all day long. And this is what they see. That's the big disconnect. And the Svengali, who is primarily behind this, is Mitch McConnell. And I've been banging the pots and pans about this now for years. I'm not done. Legal Insurrection, another great website. Why Mitch McConnell is involved in Alabama's special election, which is happening right now. And they cite Politico. McConnell's super PAC is set to spend as much as $8 million to boost his favorite candidate, recently appointed Republican Senator Luther Strange. McConnell has activated his sprawling donor network and pressed the White House for more resources. And the National Republican Senatorial Committee, which he controls, the Senate GOP campaign arm McConnell controls, has warned consultants they'll be cut off from future work if they assist Drain. Now this is Gambino style. This is Gambino style. So he's saying anybody who assists the conservatives against my candidate, you will get no funding, no support from now until the future. If you're a consultant, if you're a campaign organization, you're a campaign advisor, if I find out that you got involved in this campaign and opposed my candidate, we will cut you off. This is the Republican leader in the Senate who will go to the end of the earth to elect people who will elect him majority leader. He won't fight this way on Obamacare. He won't fight this way on tax cuts. He didn't fight this way against the Iran deal. He didn't fight this way to secure our border and get a wall up there. None of it. But when it comes to his personal power, look at him, like a mobster. And in a highly unusual step, one of McConnell's top political lieutenants has begun quietly advising a long-shot Republican primary candidate running against Mo Brooks in Mo Brooks's House seat. The move is designed to get into the congressman's head and dissuade him from emptying his campaign war chest in a race for Attorney General Jeff Sessions' old seat. So in other words, because this is a special election, they're telling Mo Brooks, we're running somebody against you. You better save some of your money for that and not pour what little money you have running against our Senate guy. This is diabolical. It's a massive undertaking, they write, by McConnell and his allies on behalf of Strange, who was appointed a mere 6 months ago to fill the seat until a special election. In part, McConnell's urgency reflects his long-standing promise to protect besieged Republican incumbents in primaries. But it also underscores his struggles managing his narrow Senate majority. It's none of that. It's all about McConnell. Strange has given his absolute support to McConnell now and in the future. So he's a consigliere to McConnell, and McConnell's going to take care of him. Here's this piece, Washington Examiner. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's reaching into Alabama to influence that election, to get a senator of his choice. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is accelerating his campaign to defeat Representative Mo Brooks in a special Senate election in Alabama. The Kentucky Republican, through his affiliated super PAC and political nonprofit, is trying to clear a path for appointed Senator Luther Strange. The Senate Leadership Fund, McConnell's super PAC, and One Nation, SFL's 501c4, see, they use the tax code to set up all these front organizations, have been alternating weeks on Alabama TV with ads promoting Strange. And the McConnell super PAC and One Nation, his two groups, have budgeted $10 million to boost Strange in the special election. First it was $8 million, now it's $10 million. If neither candidate wins more than 50% of the vote on October 15, the top two finishers will proceed to a September 26 runoff. The general election is December 12th. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely disastrous is what it actually is. Here's another one I want to talk to you about. A couple of years ago, there was a Republican primary, and I was involved in that. I backed a state senator by the name of Chris McDaniel, and he's going to run again, I hope. Chris McDaniel is a wonderful conservative from Alabama, and he decided, I'm going to take on Thad Cochran in the Republican primary. Thad Cochran had been there 30, 40 years, and Thad Cochran, everybody knows, ain't with it. He's not with it, which is why he didn't give many public speeches and so forth. But he gave McConnell every single vote he wanted. So what did McConnell do? What did Karl Rove do? What did Haley Barbour? Remember him? What did he do? Former RNC chair? They all reached into Mississippi to try and influence that Republican primary too. Chris McDaniel had it won, but then the results changed. Mississippi attack ads that painted conservative Republican, listen to this, Republicans and Tea Partiers as racists were funded by Senate Republicans. Red State Editor-in-Chief Eric Erickson has confirmed. They ran radio ads in the black communities that suggested that conservatives and Tea Party activists were racists. And nobody knew where these ads were coming. Nobody knew where this money was coming from. It was coming from them. They set up this front group to do it. And they did that in order to encourage the black vote to come out in an open primary to vote for Thad Cochran or to vote against Chris McDaniel, but to come out and vote for Thad Cochran. And it worked. Advertisements by All Citizens for Mississippi, which attacked State Senator Chris McDaniel and painted conservatives as racists, were partly funded by Senator Mitch McConnell, John Cornyn, Robert Portman, Bob Corker, and Roy Blunt. Red state Senate Republican leaders paid for attacks against conservatives. According to documents filed with the Federal Election Commission, All Citizens for Mississippi received funding from a Haley Barbour-backed group called Mississippi Conservatives. Mississippi Conservatives, in turn, was funded in part by Sally Bradshaw, the RNC's Growth and Opportunity Project, former RNC Chair Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour, the United States Chamber of Commerce, and the political action committees created for Senators Mitch McConnell, $50,000, John Cornyn, $50,000, Robert Portman, $25,000, Bob Corker, $25,000, Roy Blunt, $5,000. And as I recall, McConnell went to these senators and said, cough up the money. We need the money, and we need Cochran, because I need Cochran. McDaniel, who was narrowly defeated by Republican Senator Thad Cochran after being forced into a runoff, has called on the Mississippi Supreme Court for an emergency order granting him access to the original poll books. So there you have a front group set up by the Republicans in the Senate and Haley Barbour to run racist ads in black communities, to deceive those folks into voting the way they wanted to vote. This is McConnell. This is McConnell. Unbelievable. Here we have the ad. I want you to take a look at this, or take a listen to this. This is the radio ad from that shadowy group, All Citizens for Mississippi, attacking Chris McDaniel. Go.
This is Bishop Ronnie Croup of All Citizens for Mississippi, encouraging every registered voter to go out and vote on June 24. We're in critical time, which means we must make tough decisions. The issues do not just affect Republicans, but they affect every citizen. A victory by Tea Party candidate Chris McDaniels is a loss for the state of Mississippi. It is a loss for public education. It is a loss for the healthcare industry of this state, for the farm families and agriculture. It is a loss for Ingalls and the ship industry, for our military bases. It is a loss for the citizens of this state in a time of natural disaster, for our public universities and particularly our historically black universities. A victory for Chris McDaniels is a loss for the reputation of this state, for race relationships between blacks and whites and other ethnic groups. Mississippi can't afford Chris McDaniels. We cannot afford the price of inexperienced, untested, disconnected leadership. Billions are at stake. On June the 24th, go out and vote for Senator Thad Cochran. This ad was paid for by Political Action Committee.
Yeah, race relations. Race relations, you see? Because if you elect a conservative, we'll have very poor race relations in this country. So they set up that phony group to run that ad. And I want to tell you more. In Kentucky, in his home state, this is from the Lexington Herald Leader, and this is from just a few years ago. It's from, October 28, 2013, as a matter of fact, when Mitch McConnell was running in a Republican primary against Matt Bevin, a businessman. A businessman with like 10 kids, 8 kids. He adopted African-American children as well as his biological children, and they were attacking him for being a bigot. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But let me go on. McConnell caused widespread whiplash last week when he unleashed a blistering attack on Bevin, his Republican primary challenger, just days after the Kentucky senator had signaled he was looking past Bevin to likely Democratic opponent Allison Lundergan Grimes. Instead, several allies of McConnell and other Senate Republicans say the senator is now planning a two-front war, one against Grimes, the other against the fundraising groups that are supporting Bevin. In other words, he's attacking grassroots conservative organizations. He wants to wipe them out. He wants to destroy them. McConnell's real targets are the Senate Conservative Fund, which announced its endorsement of Bevin on October 18, Heritage Action for America, the Madison Project, and Freedom Works and other outside groups. If McConnell can crush Bevin, the thinking goes, he can expose a lack of ideological consistency in the outside groups, allowing him to separate Tea Party voters from Tea Party fundraising groups. Quote, Leader McConnell will beat his opponent because he's more in line with Kentucky Republicans, and in doing so will send a message to the groups that purity for profit is a losing strategy. Purity for profit? McConnell profits more than anybody else. The people who work for him are paid these enormous, lavish salaries in these organizations. His wife, first Secretary of Labor under Bush, now she's Secretary of Transportation under Trump, and then between those two secretarial positions, she was in the private sector, received millions of dollars worth of stock, I'm sure because she's so brilliant and important. The McConnell family has made an enormous amount of money off of politics. All we're trying to do is get people in Congress who will do the right thing. At first glance, McConnell's decision to engage Bevin last week was baffling, begging questions about the wisdom of launching an attack on Bevin so brutal that it might backfire by elevating the Louisville businessman's national profile in a way he has so far failed to do himself. So here you have mild-mannered, I want to get along, bipartisanship, and when the door's closed and the cameras aren't there and the microphones aren't there and the Klieg lights aren't there, he is a vicious, nasty human being. He wanted to crush Bevin. He wanted to crush these groups, not engage in an honest debate and so forth. He wanted to destroy them. But McConnell, along with Senator Lamar Alexander and other Senate Republicans up for re-election next year, hope to win so big in their primaries that they eviscerate their opponents' financial backers in the process. That's you, conservatives, Tea Party activists, and so forth. Now let's move into Indiana. Oh, McConnell's everywhere, baby, except on the Senate floor when we need him. Look at the tactics he uses against conservatives, Tea Party activists, and so forth. Never would use them against Schumer, never would use them on Obamacare, never would use them for tax cuts, never would use them for any of these things. The president doesn't understand what a process we have here. We got all this stuff to do here. It's very, very difficult. And when it comes to his opponent, crush him, eliminate him, destroy him. Get their funding groups, anybody who helps them, any professional consultant, any professional campaign advisory group. Tell them, we're going to milk them dry. That's right. They do this, they're on my hit list. They're on my hit list. In Indiana, there was a primary, and there was a wonderful man by the name of Marlin Stutzman, a conservative representative. And he got into the Republican primary to run for the Senate. But he's a conservative, and McConnell doesn't want any more trouble. He doesn't want these conservatives. Doesn't mind Susan Collins, a leftist. Doesn't mind Lisa Murkowski, a loathsome two-timer. Doesn't mind John McCain, who undermines the Republicans left and no. We don't want any more Mike Lees and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and their ilk. No, can't tolerate that. So this guy Todd Young was running. Todd Young, who's another milquetoast, another toady. So McConnell goes after Stutzman. Now he wants to, let's see here. McConnell's super PAC has made Indiana the first state of the cycle to begin an aggressive TV ad campaign on behalf of this guy, Young, Todd Young. And one of the GOP leader's closest allies, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This is another good-for-nothing group. I call it the U.S. Chamber of Crony Capitalism. They're not for free market capitalism in the least. They're not in there in Washington fighting for principles. They're fighting for cronyism. They're fighting for regulations and laws that help their members and defeat competition. This is a nasty, rotten organization. And they want open borders, and they want endless immigration. Endless. U.S. Chamber of Commerce is also spending big on the bucks to promote Young. The move marks a new front in the simmering wars between the establishment and the right flank of the party, a battle that has dominated the GOP since the 2010 midterms and is roiling the 2016 presidential contest. But in this case, McConnell and his allies appear to be maneuvering to defeat a candidate whom they view not only as weak in a general election, but also a potential troublemaker in the Senate GOP conference, much like Ted Cruz. In an interview with CNN, Stutzman pointed pointedly accused McConnell of retaliating against him for his vote against Boehner last year, saying it would be a lot harder for him now to back the Kentucky Republican as Senate leader if he wins in November. Wow. There's another one. Can't have that, can we, Mr. McConnell? Individuals who won't back McConnell for Senate leader. So you see what's happening is, in so many respects, we have a Senate filled with individuals who are there for one significant purpose: to protect Mitch McConnell, to promote Mitch McConnell, to empower Mitch McConnell. There's more. This is from Red State, back in 2014. Mitch McConnell, by Eric Erickson, Mitch McConnell is doing his best to walk back his comments about conservatives. He told the New York Times he intended to crush them everywhere, quote unquote. Crush them everywhere, quote unquote. Now he says he was talking about the Jim DeMint founded Senate Conservatives Fund and its candidates. Candidates like Ben Sasse, supported by Paul Ryan, Mike Lee, Club for Growth, Red State, National Review, and others. Actually, Mitch McConnell has been pretty open in the past about his contempt for conservatives. He has referred to conservatives and outside groups they fund as traitors, bullies, drunks, and the fringe. He claims conservatives tear up every bar they walk into, and he wants to punch the Tea Party in the nose. Those are his words, and he's been pretty consistent over time. Back in 2009, McConnell's associates famously put James Dobson in a terribly embarrassing spot when they lied about Rand Paul's record. McConnell sent staff into Kentucky to defeat Rand Paul. McConnell now says he only meant he wanted to crush the Senate Conservatives Fund. But back in 2009 and 2010, the Senate Conservatives Fund was the group standing with conservatives and Pat Toomey, Marco Rubio, Mike Lee, and Rand Paul against Mitch McConnell-supported Arlen Specter, Charlie Crist, Bob Bennett, and Trey Grayson. I want you to think about that. Mitch McConnell backed Arlen Specter, Charlie Crist, who's now a Democrat congressman from Florida, he switched parties, Bob Bennett, who was a very moderate Republican in Utah, who Mike Lee defeated in their convention, and Trey Grayson, another moderate establishment Republican from Kentucky. It is true that a number of McConnell's remarks have focused on the Senate Conservatives Fund, but his remarks have also targeted groups like FreedomWorks, Club for Growth, and others. He is systematically targeting conservative organizations that do not follow the National Republican Senatorial Committee's lead. What's worse, he is enlisting a bunch of useful idiots on the right to do damage control for him and to protect him. If you think Mitch McConnell needs protection and saving, consider that if McConnell had his way, Trey Grayson would be in the Senate instead of Rand Paul. Charlie Crist would be in the Senate instead of Marco Rubio. David Dewars would be in the Senate instead of Ted Cruz. Arlen Specter would have been in the Senate instead of Pat Toomey. And Bob Bennett would be in the Senate instead of Mike Lee. When McConnell attacks FreedomWorks, Senate Conservatives Fund, Club for Growth, Madison Project, and even the Tea Party, he is attacking the conservatives who have saved the Republican Party from itself. He's attacking you. And he sure as hell is. Then he takes off after DeMint. Because DeMint, you see, is a conservative organizer out there. We can't have all this stuff going on out there. From NPR. And again, this is from 2013. McConnell in recent days has publicly accused the fund, that is the Senate Conservatives Fund, which supported the government shutdown as an anti-Obamacare tactic, as giving conservatism a bad name and participating in ruining the Republican brand. He reportedly scolded a Senate colleague from Nebraska in private for linking arms with the fund. And last month, McConnell's influence was apparent when the national committee that works to get Republicans elected to the Senate said it would not do business with an advertising firm affiliated with the Senate Conservatives Fund. Notice he keeps doing this. In Alabama, anybody who takes on Strange, you will not get any of our money and any of our support. Anybody who supports the Senate Conservatives Fund, you will be cut off too, like a mobster. This is what former McConnell staffer Josh Holmes, now with the Republican Senatorial Committee, remember, this is Republican Senatorial Committee, NRSC. That's the McConnell baby right there. Told the Hill newspaper about the decision. The Senate Conservatives Fund has been wandering around the country destroying the Republican Party like a drunk who tears up every bar they walk into. The difference this cycle is that they strolled into Mitch McConnell's bar, and he doesn't throw you out, he locks the door. Oh, I'm so scared. And there's more. Here's the Daily Caller from not that long ago, June 2016. In his new memoir, oh yes, Mitch McConnell wrote a memoir, The Life and Times of Mitch McConnell. I can't wait to get it. In his new memoir, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell doesn't hide his contempt for some of the conservative groups that became aligned with the Tea Party movement. Now keep in mind, the Tea Party movement saved the Republican Party. Keep in mind, the Tea Party movement gave the Republicans legislatures throughout this country like we haven't seen in 100 years. The Tea Party gave the House of Representatives the Republican leadership. The Tea Party gave the Senate the Republican majority. This is incredible. So the Republican establishment, led by this bully, is against the Tea Party. Because now that he has the majority position, or even as minority leader, he's the leader, he doesn't like being challenged, and he's concerned. I can't have these conservatives trying to tell me what to do. You know, Collins is one thing, she's okay, but these conservatives? The growth of the Tea Party was great for base enthusiasm and was widely believed to have generated more votes for Republicans in the House elections. McConnell writes in his new book, The Long Game, which is now an old book. But much to my irritation, this movement was hijacked by a few groups by their own mercenary purposes. Hijacked. McConnell singled out the group, the Senate Conservatives Fund. He hates this group because this group was started by Jim DeMint and resulted in the election of Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Rand Paul. And he is furious about all this because he backed moderates, as I just pointed out, in every single one of those cases, including two men who switched to the Democrat Party, Christ and Specter. For the first 4 years of his presidency, if Barack Obama didn't have these guys working on his behalf, he would have had to invent them. So in other words, the conservatives are helping Barack Obama because they would go on to elect more Democrats than the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee. So in other words, the fact that we got a lot more Republicans elected but didn't get a majority right away, he blames that on the conservatives. McConnell wrote that for a self-proclaimed conservative organization, the Senate Conservatives Fund had a particularly interesting way of handling itself. It raised the vast majority of its money from well-intentioned conservatives who sent in small contributions when informed by mail or email that their dollars would ensure a conservative agenda. What was left unsaid is that the hard-earned dollars these donors sent were used exclusively to attack Republicans to the great delight of liberals across the country. No, they weren't. They were used to ensure integrity in the Republican primary process, with these phonies and these frauds taking the Republican banner, claiming to be conservatives, and running without challenge. Now they had challengers, people who campaign one way and govern another. Enough is enough of that. Now, Mr. McConnell may think that helps the liberal Democrats, but some of us think we need a real party with real principles. It's not about purity. You know, Rand Paul doesn't always agree with Mike Lee. Mike Lee doesn't always agree with Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz doesn't always agree with Marco Rubio. But it's about having fundamental principles, having a fundamentally ethical and moral base where you're not willing to deal everything. And you don't lie to your voters either. The Republican leader also accused the organization of campaigning against the most electable Republicans from the comfort of their townhouses on Capitol Hill. Unbelievable, this guy. Talk about the comfort of their townhouses on Capitol Hill. He's gotten fat and happy and rich, serving in the United States Senate forever. In a statement to the Daily Caller, Ken Cuccinelli, the Senate Conservatives Fund president, who was a great attorney general, by the way, of Virginia, said Mitch McConnell's book appears to be nothing more than an attempt to blame others for his own failures. He's currently the least popular senator with voters in his home state, and he's trying to do everything he can to whitewash his record. In fact, I believe his polls show him under 30% right now. I think I saw something at 27%. It won't work, said Cuccinelli. No matter how much Mitch McConnell attacks conservatives like Jim DeMint and Ted Cruz, history will show that he was just another career politician who went to Washington and lost his way. Mitch McConnell hates the Senate Conservatives Fund because we supported Matt Bevin against him in his primary. But we were right to do that, and now Matt Bevin is the governor of Kentucky. McConnell says that the group has helped the Democrats, But we're not the ones cutting deals with Barack Obama to increase the debt limit and to fund Obamacare, Planned Parenthood, and executive amnesty. McConnell was the one who did that. He's hijacked the Republican Party and betrayed its principles so that even when Republicans win elections, the Democrats still get to make politics. That's McConnell. Then one final note. July 25, 2015. Senator Ted Cruz feels compelled to go to the Senate floor to do something that's very rare. He goes to the Senate floor and calls out the Republican leader of the United States Senate, the majority leader of the United States, Mitch McConnell, who had made a promise to Cruz and others, and then reversed course and lied, and lied. And rather than keep it secret in a smoke-filled room where nobody would ever hear about it, because he secured Ted Cruz's vote early on through a lie, Ted Cruz went to the Senate floor and called him out. Check it out. Go.
Today is a sad day for this institution. The Senate operates based on trust. Whether we are Democrats or Republicans, these 100 senators have to be able to trust that when a senator says something, he or she will do it, even if we disagree on substance, that we don't lie to each other. We had a Senate Republican lunch where I stood up and I asked the majority leader very directly, what was the deal that was just cut on TPA, and was there a deal for the Export-Import Bank? It was a direct question. I asked the majority leader in front of all of the Republican senators. The majority leader was visibly angry with me that I would ask such a question. And the majority leader looked at me and said, there is no deal, there is no deal, there is no deal. Madam President, I went back to my office and I sat and had a long discussion with my staff. My staff told me that afternoon, he's lying to you. That's what my staff said. We've been around the Senate a long time. He is not telling you the truth. I sat in my office. I told my staff. The majority leader looked me in the eye and looked 54 Republicans in the eye. I cannot believe he would tell a flat-out lie. And I voted based on those assurances that he made to each and every one of us. What we just saw today was an absolute demonstration that not only what he told every Republican senator, but what he told the press over and over and over again was a simple lie.
Now, after Cruz spoke, he was attacked. He was attacked in Politico with the usual McConnell mouthpieces like Orrin Hatch and others, some on the record, some off the record, that we cannot have a senator like Cruz who goes to the floor and accuse somebody of being a liar. And so the circle was drawn, the wagons pulled around McConnell. There were leaks in all the typical newspapers because Ted Cruz was so hated by the liberal media. Even on cable TV, he was attacked for daring to go to the Senate floor and to break the decorum of the Senate. But he called out McConnell for lying to his face and lying to the other senators really about the Export-Import Bank, language that was slipped into this deal to resuscitate it after it had been killed. And Cruz says, I voted originally because it was represented to me that that wouldn't happen. And yet that's exactly what did happen. I am told by senators that Mitch McConnell from time to time will call one or the other into his office and berate them and warn them and threaten them. That's what's going on behind the scenes. So to circle back, when the President of the United States says to Mitch McConnell, you have a job to do, there's an agenda, it's my agenda, you're the Senate Majority Leader, I'm the leader of the Republican Party, not you. I'm the one who got elected by all the people of the country, not you. You barely got elected senator from Kentucky. It's your job to run the Senate and run it in a way that supports my agenda, not your own agenda. And you need to find ways to promote my agenda, to implement my agenda, so I can get legislation on my desk and sign these bills into law. You had plenty of time to corral these senators to get me a bill to repeal Obamacare. You've had plenty of time to develop a case for building a wall on the southern border and presenting it for me to sign. You've had plenty of time to come up with a tax cut proposal. I gave you mine and present it to me on my desk. The Democrats talk about the first 100 days, and you tell us through your Rotary Club members that look back and tell us how well we've done. Look back? We're not writing a history book. This is reality today, and you're a complete and utter failure. When it came to Obama, you couldn't stop Obama. And yet, look, when Chuck Schumer's in the minority, he can stop everything. You're now in the majority and you can't get things done. You complain about the minority and you complain about the president in the process. In the private sector, a guy like you would have his ass kicked out. That's it. Because you're not getting anything done, you're full of excuses, and you're power hungry. It's all about you and holding your positions and holding your office. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're to get anywhere in Washington, if we're to get any of our agenda adopted in Washington, D.C., Mitch McConnell needs to go. As long as Mitch McConnell remains as the majority leader in the United States Senate, there'll be victories here and there, and expected victories like the Supreme Court. But in terms of a broad-based, rational agenda to try and push back on what Obama did, to try and resuscitate our constitutional system, to try and control the size and growth of the federal government, that will not happen with Mitch McConnell and his allies in the private sector, groups like the Chamber of Commerce and all the rest of it. So unless Mitch McConnell goes and he's replaced with a conservative, not a clone, we will make no progress, and this president will make no progress either. That's it.